is Us, and today we're talking about a topic called grief. And many people have dealt with this topic, and I know someone here, Miss Tara, you've recently dealt with this very subject called grief.
Yes. 18 months ago, I did lose my father in a tragic accident. Gosh, it was pretty hard. Thinking that you're just never going to have a dad again. That can be a dark and lonely place. Thinking about my children, that they wouldn't have their papa anymore. And I had a great dad. He was a great papa to them. And then they lost that, and so did I. I just really had a hard time. I didn't want to turn to God for anything, you know. I just wanted to be alone.
Did you blame God?
Absolutely. I did.
Was that awkward being a church woman? You know,
it was. You had to put on, you know, like this facade and just pretend like everything was okay on the outside. And I thought I was doing a good job, you know, but even my children saw through that. I did. I felt like I couldn't really be sad even though I knew that I could. But I felt like I had to be strong for everyone else and not. I had put off grieving, you know, really. I put it off and put it off and put it off. And then finally, I put it off so long, I think it made me go to such a dark place because I didn't want to turn to anyone. I felt like no one else understood what I was going through. I felt like even God didn't understand, and I didn't even want to trust His word, you know.
What, when He said Jesus wept over His friend Lazarus?
Yes.
Yeah.
I didn't want to even believe that He could do all that He's capable of. Not just healing physically, but like emotionally, mentally, and be there with me. I didn't want to give Him a chance to comfort me.
Why?
I think I was scared. I think I can remember telling my husband that if I'm okay and if I'm happy, people will think I didn't care that I lost him.
Yikes. Wow. Has anyone else dealt with such a feeling of grief, even in a different way? You know, Tara's talking about the loss of her daddy, a loved one, you know, a papa. There's so many dimensions to grief. Grief of loss of relationships. Shauna, have you ever dealt with that?
I mean, for me, it's, I mean, on the death line of it, my grandma had passed away suddenly, and I was with her, 10 minutes after I'd left. She just passed away. Nobody was with her, and for the longest time I blamed myself. If I'd have just waited just a little bit longer, maybe I could have done something. And so that was really hard for me to deal with, processing grief in that aspect. But even with loss of relationships, it's like dealing with a death. I mean, you have to go through all the steps on the blames and the whys and blaming God and not understanding. I mean, I can remember sitting in my driveway in my truck screaming at God and then feeling so guilty that I had done that, going, why are you doing this? I'm doing everything that you want me to do, and this is happening to me. I have nothing. And I mean, eventually you get to where you can lean on God again, and things start looking up, and you realize that everything's for a season.
Right.
And God is with you through the bad stuff.
Right. I remember being in that same place too, thinking, God, I come to church, 3 times a week. I help in the nursery.
Come on, religious, come on.
I do all these things, and why did this happen to me? Why me? I remember thinking that.
You know, I believe that what Satan does is he takes a spirit of grief. And this is the prime opportunity that he can go, here's my inlet. I can imprison them to their emotional issues. We're talking about grief. It's loss of a loved one. It's loss of a relationship, but the effect of grief on us.
I think grief too is so, I think one of the things with grief is it's so permanent. Do you know what I mean?
No.
She'll never have her daddy here again. It's permanent.
Right.
There's nothing that will change it. There's nothing that will fix it. you know.
So what
And I
does
think
that
that's
make you
one
feel?
of the reasons
Right.
it's so hard dealing with grief
Right.
and maybe putting it off
Mhm.
and accepting it because it is so
The
permanent.
outcome won't be different.
There's
Right.
no change
There's no
in it.
change
You
in it.
can't
Right.
change it.
Wow, so that speaks to the person that is always able to fix things.
Mhm.
Right.
I can't fix this one.
Mhm.
You know, so what does that lead to? Leads and feeds every ounce of what else in our lives. I can't fix this one. I'm helpless.
Mhm.
I'm out of control. I'm
Right.
supposed to be the tough one. I've heard you
Right.
say that.
Mhm.
So that is exactly where the enemy traps us.
Right.
Exactly.
Isn't
You're
it-
forced. I mean, you're forced. One way or the other.
Yeah,
Either
you're
going
forced to move
let
on.
it control you,
Right.
or you're going to believe God and His promises.
Right.
Mhm.
You know.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know. In my case, I feel like the loss of a loving relationship, my people are still alive.
Right.
I did experience it. It did feel like a death to me.
Mhm.
You know, I went through all the grieving processes, but you know, for me, luckily there is still hope in reconciliation, and I know that reconciliation can only come through God because I can't fix it. I've already tried to fix it,
Right.
and I can't do anything. So I finally just had to lay it at the feet of Jesus, give it to Him, and move on with my life. So,
Right.
you know, and I'm still praying for reconciliation, and I know that He'll do it.
Mhm.
So mine is not a permanent one,
All right.
thankfully, yet.
Mhm.
Yeah. So with the issue of grief, there is a process. Each of you spoke about that, and if you were to talk about it, you would the sadness, the blame. I've heard that, both of those. I haven't heard a lot about anger. Angry. You mentioned a little bit about it, but I truly believe that it is a trap of the enemy to keep us into a very angry, bitter place with grief.
Yes.
I have the right. Nobody can say anything about me. I can be angry because this was taken from me. It's like a
Yeah.
valuable
Yeah.
stolen possession. We rented an apartment while we were building our house, and I had 2 valuable possessions, 2 diamond rings from my grandmother who's no longer with me, and I treasured those. We didn't move all of our stuff into this apartment, and we moved a mattress in that bedroom. And of course makeup, gotta have the makeup. But I had a little bitty wooden box, and it had some valuable coins and 2 diamond rings in that. We had a leak in our house and had somebody come in and fix it. And I noticed a few days later that that little box was missing. I grieved over that. And I think about the Bible story of the lady who lost the coins, how she would sweep her house looking for something that was missing. And I believe that grief does that. I think we start looking for something that's missing.
Mhm.
There's such a void that's left, such a
Right.
loss. And it doesn't matter our abilities, it doesn't matter our callings, it doesn't matter our anointing, it doesn't matter anymore. Watch me, I get mad even thinking about it because it's gone.
Right.
Right.
Like you said, it's gone and
Yeah.
it's not supposed to be.
Well, and like, I mean, the one grief that I can really relate to was my grandmother. She was everything to me. And it was so many years ago. But even now, I think, look at all that my children have missed out on not
Mhm.
knowing her,
Yeah.
you know, because, and this is 10, 12, 15 years later that I
Right.
still think about it,
Mhm.
you know, because that's just part of it. I mean,
It is a part of it, but as we all know, and as you know very personally, that God can come into that lost place, that empty place, and fill the void.
Yes.
And with that place of loss, He can give us new beginnings.
Mhm.
So, new beginnings, at what place do you go, you know what, it's gone. I can't do anything about it. And I gotta move on with my life. How do you move on?
Well, for me, going through this process of grieving, what really made me notice how it was affecting my life was my children, because they would ask me, "Mom, are you going to cry today? Are you going to be sad?" So I knew then that I had to make a change, not only for me, but for my family and my husband. I just really had to seek God. I had to just completely give it to Him. I couldn't, you know, that's why He died on the cross for us, so we don't have to carry anything. And when I would feel like no one else understood, He would remind me of the cross, you know. He does understand.
He does understand.
He
God
does.
gave His Son. He
Mhm.
understands loss. In Isaiah 53:4 it says, "Surely He has bore our grief, and He has carried our sorrows." Today, if you're experiencing grief or loss or pain from a loss of relationship, a loss of a loved one, God understands. You're not alone. Find a place to get along with God, and He will be the comfort that no man, no word can be. This is us.
This is real.